My parents abandoned me on my wedding day because my perfect sister wasn't married first. I stood at the altar, my hands trembling, not from excitement, but from an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The room was packed with friends, distant relatives, and my soon-to-be in-laws, but there were two empty seats right at the front. My parents' seats. They were supposed to be here smiling at me, proud of me, but they weren't. They never showed up. And the reason? Because I had broken an unspoken family rule, one that valued my sister's perfect life over my own happiness. The first thing people noticed about our family was how perfect it looked from the outside. My father, a respected lawyer, carried an air of authority that made people admire and fear him in equal measure. My mother was the ideal housewife, always ensuring our home was spotless and that we looked like the picture of a loving, well-mannered family. And then there was my sister, Elena. Elena was everything my parents had ever dreamed of in a daughter. Beautiful, intelligent, poised. She had straight A's in school, went to a prestigious university, and had a long line of admirers waiting for her attention. She was the golden child, the standard of excellence that I, the younger sister, was expected to follow. I, on the other hand, was simply me. I wasn't as brilliant as Elena, nor was I the type of person who always said the right things at the right time. I loved books more than social gatherings, and while my grades were decent, they weren't spectacular. I had always felt like a supporting character in my own family story, standing in Elena's shadow. But for the longest time, I told myself it didn't matter. That was until I fell in love. I met Daniel during my second year of college. He wasn't from a prestigious family like Elena's suitors, nor did he have an Ivy League degree. He was an architect, hardworking, kind, and full of dreams. When I was with him, I felt seen for the first time. We started dating secretly because I knew my parents wouldn't approve. My mother had made it clear that they expected me to follow a proper path. Graduate, let them find me a respectable match, like they were doing for Elena, and then marry when the time was right. The problem? The right time was when Elena got married first. I still remember the day I told my parents about Daniel. An architect? My father's lips twisted as if I'd just said I was dating an unemployed man. That's not a stable career. He's good at what he does, I said, my hands gripping my skirt. And he loves me. That's not the point, my mother said sharply. Elena hasn't married yet. How will it look if you, the younger sister, get married before her? I frowned. How will it look? Who cares? My parents exchanged glances before my mother sighed as if I were being difficult on purpose. You don't understand, sweetheart. These things matter. It would be humiliating for Elena. People will think there's something wrong with her if her younger sister marries first. She has a reputation to uphold. A reputation to uphold. It always came back to Elena. I stormed out of the conversation that night, angry and hurt. But I told myself they would come around. Surely they wouldn't let something so outdated stand in the way of my happiness. I was wrong. For the next few months, my parents pretended that conversation had never happened. They continued treating me the same as always. But every time Daniel was brought up, they dismissed him. Even Elena, who had always been the kind sister, started acting distant. One evening, she sat next to me in the living room, her voice hesitant. You should wait, you know, she said softly. I turned to her, my stomach tightening. Wait for what? For me to get married first. I scoffed. You're not even dating anyone seriously. What if you don't marry for years? She looked away, guilt flashing across her face. It won't be that long. Elena, I said, my voice shaking. Do you even want to get married? Or are you doing it because Mom and Dad want you to? She didn't answer. I knew then that we were both trapped. The difference was I was willing to break free. Despite my parents' cold disapproval, Daniel and I grew closer. We talked about the future, about building a life together. And then one evening, under a sky filled with stars, he got down on one knee. Marry me, he said. Not because it's the right time or because of anyone else, but because I love you. Tears filled my eyes. Yes, it was the easiest decision I had ever made. But telling my parents, that was a nightmare. When I broke the news, my mother went pale. My father's face hardened. And Elena, sitting in the corner, simply lowered her head. You will not go through with this, my father said. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I'm not asking for permission, I said, standing firm. I'm telling you that I'm getting married. You're being selfish, my mother snapped. You're ruining everything for your sister. Elena, I turned to her, my heart pounding. Tell them you don't care about this ridiculous rule. She lifted her head, eyes filled with something I couldn't read. And then she said, it's true. If she marries first, it will make things harder for me. My stomach dropped. Elena, I whispered. She wouldn't even look at me. My own sister had just sided with them. In the following weeks, my parents tried everything: emotional manipulation, threats, even trying to set Elena up with a stranger just to rush her wedding. But I stood my ground. When they realized I wasn't going to back down, they gave me an ultimatum. If I married before Elena, they would not attend. My wedding day arrived, and as I stood in my dress, looking at the empty seats where my parents should have been, my heart ached. I had known they wouldn't come. But knowing and feeling the pain of it were two different things. And then, as I stood at the altar, I saw movement at the back of the room. Elena. She was standing there watching, and in her eyes I finally saw it, the truth she had never been able to say. She had never wanted to be the perfect daughter. She had just been too afraid to break free. But it was too late now, because I was walking away from them all. The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel held my hands, his eyes filled with love and unwavering support. My friends, his family, and even some distant relatives came to celebrate our union. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the absence of my parents and sister was a shadow over the day. I caught glimpses of Elena standing at the back, her hands clasped tightly. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was just watching. When I turned to look again, she was gone. As I walked down the aisle as Daniel's wife, happiness and sadness waged a silent war inside me. I had chosen love. I had chosen freedom. But why did it still feel like I had lost something? After the wedding, my parents cut me off entirely. No phone calls, no texts, no messages through family members. It was as if I had ceased to exist. I tried reaching out at first, hoping they would eventually forgive me for something I didn't even consider a crime. But every attempt was met with silence. Elena, however, was different. A week after the wedding, she sent a single text. I'm sorry. That was it. Nothing more. It made me angrier than if she had said nothing at all. She had betrayed me. She had stood by while our parents treated me like a disgrace. And now she wanted to say sorry? I ignored the message. It wasn't until a month later that I heard from Elena again. One evening, I was home with Daniel when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena? There was silence, followed by a shaky breath. Can we meet? I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to say no, but a small part, the one that still remembered our childhood. Our late-night whispers and secrets said yes. We met at a quiet cafe far from our usual family spots. Elena looked different. She wasn't wearing the perfect makeup our mother insisted on. Her hair, usually styled to perfection, was slightly messy. Thank you for coming, she said softly, staring down at her coffee. I folded my arms. Why am I here, Elena? What do you want? She sighed, rubbing her temples. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said before your wedding. A chill ran through me. Then say it. She hesitated before whispering, I never wanted to get married first. I scoffed. That's obvious. You barely even dated anyone. No, her voice trembled. You don't understand. I never wanted to get married at all. My breath caught in my throat. Elena, the golden child, the perfect daughter, the one my parents had been trying to marry off for years. She continued. Mom and Dad don't just control our lives, they dictate them. They've spent years choosing my clothes, my hobbies, my friends. And marriage? It was just another thing I was supposed to do because they told me to. I stared at her, my anger twisting into something else, something closer to heartbreak. So why didn't you tell them that? I whispered. She laughed bitterly. Because they don't listen. Because they never cared what I wanted. She swallowed hard. And because, if I refused, they would have blamed you. A wave of nausea hit me. They already blamed me, I said hoarsely. She shook her head. Not like this. If I had outright refused, they would have said it was because of you, that you made me rebellious, that you influenced me. They would have hated you more than they already do. I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. You let them destroy our relationship? I whispered, my throat tight. You let them make me the villain. Tears welled in her eyes. I know, and I'll never forgive myself for it. That conversation with Elena cracked open something inside me. For years, I had believed my parents were simply traditional, a little strict but well-meaning. But now, I saw them for what they were, controlling, manipulative, and willing to sacrifice their own daughters for their pride. A few weeks later, I got confirmation of just how far they would go. An old family friend reached out to me, someone who had attended Elena's engagement party years ago. You should know something, she said in a hushed voice. Your parents tried to force Elena into an arranged marriage last year. I froze. What? They picked a man, wealthy, from a respected family, but Elena begged them not to go through with it. Your father was furious. Your mother called her ungrateful. And then they threatened to disown her. My heart pounded in my chest. That was why Elena had stayed quiet. That was why she had gone along with their rules. She had been just as trapped as I had been, maybe even more. Just when I thought I had uncovered the worst of my family's secrets, another betrayal hit me like a truck. Daniel came home one night looking pale. He held up his phone, showing me a message from an unknown number. It was from my mother. You can still leave her. We'll make sure you have a better future, one that isn't tied to our foolish, disobedient daughter. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. They're trying to bribe you to leave me? I whispered, my hand shaking. Daniel clenched his jaw. They don't just want me to leave. They're offering me money to disappear completely, to pretend this marriage never happened. Tears burned my eyes. They had abandoned me, ignored me, cut me off. But that wasn't enough for them. Now they wanted to erase me. I took the phone and typed a response. You already lost me, but now you've lost any hope of me ever coming back. Then I blocked their number. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. A few weeks after my parents' last betrayal, I thought I had finally put the past behind me. But then Elena showed up at my doorstep. She looked different, haunted, exhausted. Her eyes darted around as if she was afraid someone had followed her. I need your help, she whispered. I hesitated. After everything, could I still trust her? She stepped inside, gripping my hands desperately. I'm running out of time and I don't know what to do. I frowned. What do you mean? Tears welled in her eyes. They've arranged another marriage for me. I told them I didn't want it, but this time they won't take no for an answer. My stomach twisted. How bad is it? I asked. She swallowed hard. The man they chose? He's over 40. He's been divorced twice and... Her voice dropped to a whisper. I heard rumors that he hits his wives. A cold shiver ran down my spine. They wouldn't do that to you, I said, though even as I said it, I knew I was lying to myself. Elena gave a hollow laugh. You still don't get it, do you? They don't care about me. They never did. They just want their perfect family image. Her hands trembled. I don't have anywhere else to go. I took a deep breath, and in that moment I knew I had to protect her no matter what. The next day we went to my parents' house. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them again, but I had no choice. My mother opened the door, her face twisting in anger when she saw me. You shouldn't be here, she spat. I pushed past her, pulling Elena inside. Neither should you, if you think you can ruin her life like this. My father entered the room, his expression cold. She knows her duty. She will marry the man we chose. I clenched my fists. Like hell she will. Elena stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. I'm not your puppet. I won't do it. My mother's face turned red with fury. We have given you everything. And this is how you repay us? No, I cut in. You controlled us. You manipulated us. But it ends today. My father's voice dropped to a low, threatening tone. If you walk away from us, you are no longer our daughters. Elena squeezed my hand. Then so be it. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my parents' eyes, not fear of losing us, but fear of losing control. And just like that, we turned our backs on them. A week later, as we were packing Elena's things from her apartment, we found something shocking. Hidden in her closet was a stack of letters. Dozens of them. They were from an aunt we had never met, our mother's younger sister. Curious, we opened one. Dear Elena, I hope you and your sister are doing well. I've been trying to reach out, but your mother won't allow it. Please know that if you ever need help, I am here. I was once in your position, and I know how hard it is to escape. Our breaths caught. We had an aunt who had been through this before, and our mother had hidden it from us? I grabbed my phone and searched for her name. Within minutes, I found her contact information. "Elena," I whispered. "We're not alone." Meeting our aunt changed everything. She told us the truth, how our mother had been raised in the same suffocating environment and had chosen to pass it down to us instead of breaking free. But now we had a choice. With her help, Elena started a new life. She moved in with me and Daniel, got therapy, and for the first time, made her own decisions. As for me, I realized that I no longer needed my parents' approval. I had built a life worth living, with or without them. One day, I received another text from my mother. "It's not too late to come back. We can fix this." I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. Because some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to be left behind. And that was the day I finally felt free.